It was the one I was going to make. I try to explain this to people. I try to tell people Jordan Burroughs is a world champion in 3 different sports. They go, oh, come on. No, hey, wrestling's wrestling. It's like, no, it's not.
No.
I have a very good friend of mine. His name is Daryl Christian. Daryl would have been our Olympian in 2004 for Greco. We did not qualify the weight class. Daryl was a 2-time defending U.S. Open champion. The U.S. Open, whoever won it back then, would sit into the finals for both styles. They would sit. Daryl won the Open, and prior to the trials, he retired and didn't show because they changed the rule set. And this was like the 3rd time they changed it. And he looked at the rules and he just said, that's not what I do. That's a different sport. It's not the one I have. He was number one. He didn't do this for sympathy. He literally, nobody even knows this story. Never told him, but he declined the spot. He moved into a medical field. He does something completely different. But that just speaks to the power. They did this in the NCAA. The young man from Oklahoma State, he was a 2-time defending champion, but he would wrestle from his butt. And Dean Heil. And they changed the rule mid-season, and he didn't even All-American. And I don't speak to, I just share that rules matter. It's what you're trained to do. They switched on Jordan Burroughs 3 times. Massive changes. He still became the champion of the world.
It's unbelievable. And now I'm gonna pose this question to you. We might have talked about this another time. Is Jordan Burroughs without a step out rule? My contention is he is not. Think about this and think about it closely, okay?
I am.
Every single one, I can't say every single one. I did actually do the plot graph one time, him and Shimizu. 90% of their takedowns happen on the edge, out of bounds. I don't know, without the fear, when John was wrestling, guy could, if you were under severe attack, you could go out of bounds, you'd be safe back in the center. Not here. You have even the threat of going out of bounds changes everything. It changes everything. So not only do they have to wrestle back into you, if they do go out, you're somehow penalized. You're penalized with a point. I don't know that Jordan would have 7 world titles and made 11 teams without a step out rule. I just don't think it's possible, just because of the way he wrestles.
Sure. No, the way he maximized that position for sure. And I would tell you, I was kind of seeing it in the reverse, which was his 2 matches to Sidakov, both semifinals, both 5-5, both less than 10 seconds left. And he was the other side of it, where Sidakov pushed. In fact, I think Sidakov tied it 5-5, but on criteria, he was able to win. It was very interesting. I don't know from that perspective. That's fascinating. Speaking of Burroughs, there was a year as his sophomore year, and he was at 149 pounds. ESPN covers like the semifinals, and they showed the bracket. Metcalf ended up winning that bracket. I want to say Jordan Lean was in that bracket. Burroughs was down here.
Sure.
I mean, that was like the hardest semifinals of all time, and he really wasn't known. So then Jordan's junior year, he bursts onto the scene, but he bursts onto the scene in the absence of Andrew Howe, who at 19 was the U.S. Open champion. Andrew Howe was the best wrestler in America any way you wanted to do it. And I remember that match finally came down, and it came down to the Midlands the following year, and that was supposed to be the one for one reason, and it wasn't that Jordan wasn't great. He can't keep up. Nobody can keep up with Andrew Howe, particularly in a collegiate. It's easier to survive in freestyle than collegiate. Burroughs won every aspect of that match, including the conditioning. Burroughs held up dead even with Andrew Howe, and he got him down at the end. Burroughs had enough points to stall it out, and he went and got another takedown. I want to say the final score was like 11-8, 11-7. But that was really the one where everybody goes, my God, this guy. I mean, that was really a break. That Midlands championship over Andrew Howe after a year of waiting, and we all believed that was going to be his kryptonite. That was a very big win.
It was, here's the thing to me. There's such starkly different styles of wrestling. Andrew Howe, the funniest thing I've ever heard about Andrew Howe, Jake Herbert tells me, man, I never saw my undercarriage like I did when I was wrestling on Andrew Howe. All he did was grab me by the ears and pull my head under my legs. He's like, I never knew what my undercarriage looked like. Now I do, because I wrestled Andrew Howe, and it was the most miserable experience of my entire life. And he's right. But Jordan wouldn't let him. he would kind of do that kind of dance away stuff, and as soon as he reached again, pop, there was another double, and he had to deal with that, and he had to deal with it, and he had to deal with it, and that's exhausting. Even if he doesn't fire off on those doubles, even if he doesn't get like to the legs, it's taxing on the central nervous system to to do one of those every 15 seconds. It's impossible on your nervous system.
University Nationals, Evanston, Illinois, the finals, 174 kilograms, and I think they spotted him 2 kilos, but the finals came down to Andrew Howe versus Kyle Dake. It was 1-0 for the title, and I think Andrew beat him. I think so Andrew Howe beat Kyle Dake that year.
I think that was the last of the ball draws.
I think it was, but I believe, and I could have that wrong. It was for sure 1-0. It was and maybe it was Dake, but I believe Andrew beat him. I mean, I just offer that, like, if you look at the murderer's row that is America, our guys have so much to be proud of. Yeah. I mean, I see some of these wrestlers that are so admirable, and that we all as a community look up to, hanging their head, or they don't want to go to events, or they're shy around people because they failed. They saw it as a fail. Mike Zadek, you can't even talk wrestling with Mike Zadek because it was a fail. It's like, that is not fair, Mike. That actually upsets me with Mike. I've known him his whole life. That upsets me. He should not have to go one day feeling as though he failed. We all look up to him. He was tougher. He was meaner. He had more opportunity. It's too much. There's such a thing as too much pressure, and some of these guys put too much on themselves.
Yes. Speaking of which, we got CKLV this week, brother. I'm stoked for this one. Dude, I'm stoked for this one. Look, here's the thing. This is the kind, everyone knows that this is the granddaddy of all, like, preseason not preseason, but, Christmas tournaments. And this year is not going to disappoint. I got a bunch of things that I want to talk to you about, but I don't know if you took a look at the doc, but 125, that's where I want to start. Okay. Now, I just got word that Nico Provo is not in. He's not in, right? So he's out. But aside from that, I'm going to give you a list of names at 125, and I would like to hear some of your thoughts on this. Richie Figueroa, Caleb Smith, and by the way, those are ranked number 1 and 2. Matt Ramos, number 3. Tanner Jordan, number 4. Troy Spratley, number 5. Jory Volk, number 7. Nico Provo's out. Greg D, number 9. Brendan McCrone, number 10. Eddie Van Tresca, number 12. Vincent Robinson, watch this guy. He is a son of a gun to deal with. Okay. Diego Sotolo, and now we get into the Maximo Renterias and the Adrian Mazes of the world, and you're talking about ranked 24 and 29, and we're not giving them a shot to win this thing, but I think we could.
Mike, I'm taking Maximo.
What?
And you're going to go, okay, well, there's some home cooking, Oregon State. Sure. I've never met the young man. I've only got to see him wrestle one time. As a matter of fact, it was at Oklahoma State 2 weeks ago, and he lost. I'm sharing with you, I'm taking Maximo. Now, give you a little reason as to why I say that. I know of 3 matches that he's had against Figueiredo. They might have had more. I know of 3 matches. One was high school. I know of he beat him 2 of the 3. And if I've got it wrong, he beat him all 3 times. Maximo had great issues, so they couldn't get him in the lineup last year. Yeah. He actually broke into the lineup for a dual meet against Figueiredo and beat Figueiredo. And it wasn't like a big deal to do it. He had like kind of like this big brother thing. Like when they both stepped to the mat, you could read their body language and you knew Maximo was going to win. And then he did. There was 3 takedowns in the match. They were all Maximos. I mean, I'm just sharing for you.
That was at a dual meet, right? That was at a dual meet in Arizona.
In Arizona.
Yeah, I was there.
Because he even did something rude to Zeke Jones. He did. I can't remember what it was, but he did something to him that you're not allowed to do. But Maximo's the real deal. And then you have competitors, and that's a different thing. Like the NCAA tournament, one of the reasons that there's so many surprises in March, it's a certain kind of competitor that can grind that out. I think Maximo is that kind of guy, but I don't have to know for this. This one is so early in the season that it's going to be him, and he does some of his finest work when it's not expected of him. It's one of the reasons he wrestled so well against Figueiredo. He was getting slipped into the lineup. He didn't even know if he'd be at the conference tournament. This was kind of his one. And I'm just sharing for you, he's in a really good spot. Like the things that make him tick physically and mentally, they're all there. That's a huge pick. There's some real studs in there. I'd love to hear your argument for
Okay,
Robinson. I think I would
I
say,
don't
if I
even
could have
care.
one thought, I
Go
don't
ahead.
think Figueiredo will win it. That's my
Okay.
bigger thought. My bigger thought is I don't think Figueiredo's going to win it.
Yeah. Okay. Now that is a fair assessment because, like you said, he shows up in March. The kid knows what tournament it puts bread on the table, and it's the NCAA tournament. Now, I don't even care who wins this. I want to bring up something else. This kid, Vincent Robinson, is a redshirt freshman starting over Camacho, who is a four-time ACC champion, All-American. He was a round of 12 last year. And I text Pat this morning, and I said, Pat, are you going to put both guys? He's like, well, we can only bring one guy per weight class. We're going with the young buck. We're going with the young buck. And I'm sitting there going, just seeding criteria alone, would make me at least second guess it. But he says, no, we're going. And good on, and I'm not second guessing Pat Papalizio because God knows he knows what he's doing.
Best
But I
coach
will
in the
say
country
this: they've
right now.
made their money rolling out the young bucks in Raleigh, and the dude is sticking to it. Now, don't get me wrong; I'm sure he has more than one reason to start Vince Robinson over Jacob Camacho. But I think what this is telling us more than anything else is that these kids, and I shouldn't even call them kids because he's been in college for 7 years, but these guys that have that 6th and 7th year, maybe they don't have the same type of results that they did when they were younger, right? Maybe it wasn't such a great idea to take that extra year for everybody. I'm sure it's worked out for someone. I just don't know who.
I hear everything that you're saying, and I feel that same way. It is a big deal. I would love to know, and we never will, but what exactly did Pat see? But like, what exactly was happening in the room that got us to enter this guy? And this is a big one for the coaches, from the scuffle to the Midlands to the Cliff Keen. That's it. Those were our big ones, and then we roll into conference tournament and the postseason. And I just share with you, like, yeah, man, it's a big deal that he's getting the nod. And there is something where some of these guys, you never know what makes them perform. And can they do it over and over? A lot of them need to be counted out. They need to be the young freshmen that people aren't expecting later in life as they're seniors. Sometimes they get the blues, but I hear what you're saying on this Robinson. And I do feel like 25 historically has gone to the younger guys. I mean, it even did last year with Braden out of Penn State, whether that season ended the way he wanted it to or not. But there is a power that they get from being weaker, from being less mature. They actually gain a strength from it. Yeah, Robinson he's one to one. The same argument you're making for Robinson is the same one I'm making for Maximo. We're making the same argument with two different guys, and I do see that as a strength. Hey, by the way, this is really slippery slope, what you got to do as a coach here. You try to get in these best tournaments and the best competition. All of that is really good to see, but all we see it do is grind guys up. It never helps them be ready in March. It does the opposite. They start firing their bullets, and all of a sudden that chamber is empty, and you just hope that you get through March. Like, it's a big deal. And I share that because a lot of the times what we will call ups, David Carr lost at this tournament, for goodness sakes, to the freshman for Cornell. They just don't bring the best version of them, but they shouldn't. They got to know, man, and you got to know when to win. And if you use them every single Saturday, it's not always there when you need it, right? Some of the great, rare competitors, but it doesn't work that way.
For sure. And I want to get into this in a little bit, but there are kids that are just above the tournament that they're going to walk through it no matter what. But 125 historically, with the exception of Spencer Lee, historically has been kind of up in the air, especially last year. I think this tournament kind of exemplifies that. You're literally picking the person that is ranked 24th in the country over the guys that are ranked in the top 10. There's 9 in the top 10 to win this tournament. Now, all that being said, I think that is a symptom of what happens in high school. You can go out and perform in October, November, December, and still perform at a high school level in January, February, and March. And you can't do it in the NCAA. It's just too difficult a wrestling season. It's far too deep. It is there is a 30-second seed that is looking to rip your head off when it comes to the NCAA tournament. And he doesn't care if you're the next big thing coming into college. In fact, he kind of prefers it, right? He kind of prefers it because the bigger accolades you have coming into college, the more these guys are kind of licking their chops trying to get to you, especially in March. Yes?
Oh, yeah. No, hey, those incredible guys, those ones that you and I looked up to, maybe he was a 4-time state champion, or maybe had an undefeated season in college or two, maybe he made an Olympic team right out of college. But one thing they all have in common, all of them have in common, is their career is over by 27 years old. I mean, you literally, it's a gun with the chambers example that when that last bullet comes, there's nothing you can do, and you can fire those early. You can get a pretty good, historically, you can get about 10 years out of a guy, but when do you want those 10 years? Do you want him to kick in when he's a junior in high school? I see these fathers at tournaments having an 8-year-old cut weight, and I want to just grab, go, maybe just please trust me, this never ends well. Those kids that get put, or they get kicked out of the car and they got to run home because they did something wrong, like when they have the choice at 18 years old, they do not come home for the holiday. You are going to be spending Christmas alone. I will beg people, please trust me. I've seen this for 40 years. Don't do it this way. Take your kid to breakfast, then take him to weigh-ins. Yes. I mean, but literally, you got to do this at a certain age where that scale doesn't matter. And that's the great competitor that people don't see. When you talk about people getting ground down, it's not just those 7-minute matches. They got to beat the scale as well. That's the one that really tires guys out.
Yes, 100%. I think we're starting to see a change. I really, truly do. I think here, and we can debate as to why, but a part of it to me is professionalism in youth coaching now. David Taylor, up until very recently, was a youth coach. Let's call it what it is, right? Okay, so there are high Ben Askren is, for all intents and purposes, a youth coach, okay? So when you have a serious professional, you can take a kid and go, he's all yours, dude. He's all yours. And Ben knows, not only am I not going to have my kids cut weight in 5th grade, I'm not having them compete until 6th, 7th grade. Like you're talking about saving those bullets in a big bad way. And they're reaping the rewards of it now. Because if you look at the NCAA rankings, there's a lot of Askren guys that are at the number 1 spot in both, Shapiro, or excuse me, not Shapiro, Messenbrink, O'Toole, Parker Keckheisen was a national champion last year. He's not number 1 right now, but you get the point. Like, these guys are being turned out by a system that excludes that 8-year-old weight cut bullshit that nobody thought was a good idea, except the dad that really wants a trophy for himself, not for the kid. Yes?
Very few people got to enter anybody into the Olympic trials. Like, that process is really tough. We have very meaningful teams that did not get to have a representative in state college at the final wrestle-off. Then you got really good programs, and they come with a lot of funding. They might have 2 or 3 guys in the room that were all headed for the same goal. The Askren Wrestling Academy had 6 guys in the final at state college, the final Olympic wrestle-off. I mean, what they are doing success-wise is unbelievable, but Ben and Mac, they do believe in this play attitude. You want to know who's really helped attitude-wise and doesn't get credit is Pat Smith. Pat Smith, whenever you talk to, like, this is one of the fiercest competitors there's ever been, and he puts out this message of lighten up. When he had a tournament, the only thing he gave away at that tournament was ice cream. And he told every parent, when this is over, take your kid to ice cream. Do not discuss that. Don't celebrate the gold, and don't frown if you were out in 2. Take him to ice cream. Just celebrate the day and nothing more. And he was having raffles and coupons, and he's handing out ice cream to people. This was his big belief, but ice cream is representative more of an attitude. And Pat told a story about himself, said he was in Fargo, that he lost a match, and he goes to the stands and he's all disappointed, right? I mean, this is the Smith family. He's all disappointed. Yeah. And all that his old man said to him is, someday that kid will brag that he beat Pat Smith. He said nothing more. And the next year, Pat won it. And then the next 4 years, Pat won national titles. I think that was over 5. I think he ended up redshirting in '93. But my point is, that attitude is very real. And even
Yeah.
Pat himself did go through some of it. He wins 4 NCAA titles. He gets on the open scene. He does it because that's what the family does. But he'd fired his bullets. He wasn't quite the same competitor. He was a damn good wrestler, but the competitor, it wasn't quite the same. I think Pat makes an excellent point. I hope more people hear it.
Yeah, I do too. And I'm gonna stick with the ice cream theme. I was in Budapest, Hungary, when Kyle Snyder wrestles against Sadulayev and he gets pinned in the first minute or so of the match. I got to tell you something. I was upset. I was visibly upset. I don't want to say the word angry, but I was bummed out, man. You know, we could have won a team title. There was so many different things. I thought he had kind of cemented himself as the greatest wrestler in the world at the time. And I talked to him afterwards, and I literally said, I'm not exaggerating. Go, so what are you going to do? Like, what are we going to do next? And I even said the we thing. Like, I hate when people say well, I ain't doing shit. He's doing it, right? Like, I said something to the effect of like, what are we going to do next? He goes, well, I'm probably going to get a milkshake. And he just walked off. And I was so taken aback by that. I'm like, what? Okay. So now, and I told that to my son, and my son takes losses very hard. But I already won, dude. Like I'm winning. He's wrestling. Like, and he enjoys it. I got the W already. So after he, sulks for about, I give him about 30 minutes to piss and moan about his loss. And then he always, without fail, looks at me and goes, let's go get a milkshake. And that's it. That's it. And it's over, because as soon as we get the milkshake, it's all over. And I think that is a prevailing thought. And I think the reason that I have hope that we have more bullets in the gun now in 2024, 25, our athletes do more than 10 years, is because you look at Kyle Snyder, and he was all world when he was a high school kid. He was that guy that took the Olympic shirt, or, he took a year at the OTC between high school and college. He was an NCAA finalist 4 times, and he's still doing it. And he's still doing it at a real high level. Like, the dude is unreal. We talked about greatest of all time. He's still going. Kyle Snyder's still going. He's still making teams at every single level. Unreal, dude. Unreal.
Well, and he's still, on a personal note, is chasing a goal that doesn't really get talked about, but he's chasing Baumgartner's overall medal count. In fact, it's why a lot of us were really hoping in the Olympics, and he wrestled back to that bronze, because in 2028, when it's here in Los Angeles, would be, had he medal all the way through, would be the day that he would actually break Bruce's record. So I'm just sharing for you, like, to some, maybe that wouldn't be a big draw, but when you're somebody like Kyle and you've got to search for motivation, I'm just sharing with you, like, he still has it. He has goals that we might never think of. It's funny, Mike, when you were telling that story about that match with Sadulayev, you were telling the story, your body language instantly did this. I knew what that meant. I knew what that meant when he hooked that elbow before he took him through. Oh, I was devastated as a fan. Oh, that hurt so bad. And we'd waited to see that match. And then we're never guaranteed it again. Like, that's the match. And Kyle would do it every Saturday if you let him. He can't get opponents that nobody likes to wrestle as much as Kyle Snyder. That dude never misses an opportunity. It is the number one thing I respect about him. He actually likes to wrestle, and he sets a good example for the kids.
Yeah, no, 100%. Hey, so look, let's get back to CKLB. 197 pounds. Your buddy and partner AJ Ferrari is back at it. And now you're going to look at these rankings, and you're going to look at this list of characters, and it's
outrageous.
AJ Ferrari. Outrageous. Zach Glazer, who is now wrestling for South Dakota State because Iowa recruited over his head, which I get it. That's fine. Trey Munoz, love him to death. Luke Geog, who, he's a guy that maybe doesn't have his best tournament in March, not unlike the Maximo Renterias of the world. And he's a guy that is as talented as anybody in the field. Andy Smith is number 11, Luke Server number 12, Wyatt Volker for the University of Northern Iowa at 16. And the Christian Carroll's at Iowa State. He's super talented too. Let me ask you this, okay? And I'll preface it with another goofy story about my son. After Gable retired from wrestling the first time around, he said, I'm done. I put my shoes in the middle and I'm done, 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 done. And then there were, yes. Sorry. Gable Steveson. He puts his shoes in the center. And then about a year later, you start hearing rumblings that he's going to show up at the World Team Trials. You start hearing these things like, oh, he's getting back into shape. Oh, he's been seen in the wrestling room. Oh, he might wind up coming to this tournament. And this is after a full year off. Okay. And my son turned to me in the car as he's reading some rumors about it and their group messaging and stuff like that. And he goes, there's no way he'd make the team. He's been out of the sport for a year. I was like, you're a crazy person. I go, you're absolutely out of your mind. And he goes, what do you mean? I go, here's the thing. Okay. Yes, this is a very difficult sport. At that level, it is intensely difficult. And the margin of error in those spots is so small that it lends itself to most thinking going, well, if you haven't trained in a year, you can't win at that level. I disagree with a guy like him because he is a generational talent. He's one of the greatest wrestlers I've ever seen in my entire life. Now, here's the real question about it, okay? Does AJ Ferrari have enough reps in the bank? Does he have enough talent to simply win an NCAA title, or in this instance, a CKLV title, on his past experience alone?
Yeah. And the answer, no. The answer to that short would be no. I only got disappointed one time with AJ just because I didn't understand it, and that was him not entering the Olympic trials at State College last year. He was qualified. He was qualified through having the age group medal within the quadrennium, and I just wanted him to enter. And the reason I wanted him to enter is because I just want to know, does he love wrestling? He was getting a little bit of focus towards MMA, and AJ was up against it. I mean, our community did not treat him overly gracious and opening, and it was a little more than he could bear. But I really wish that he would have, because he just needs those matches. And he was training. He went through, when he was at Iowa, man, they would talk about him. He never missed practice. He always did on his own at least one workout a day. He's real into lifting weights. He's into flexibility and yoga, but he did everything that the greats do, that the guys that were training for the trials do. And I fully believe in him. I don't believe the people that are seeding him truly believe that. I don't believe on the pound for pound list where they put him at number 12 that they truly believe there's 11 guys with more skills than Ferrari. But the problem with beating him, no matter who you are, how are you going to score? That's the first thing. Like getting in on his legs with his mere posture, his mere strength, the fact that you can put his leg over his head and you're not guaranteed he's going to fall down. Like, he doesn't go and get a whole bunch of points himself.
No.
But how are you going to get the point on him? I really can't imagine him getting beat. I really can't.
Here's the thing, okay? And I'll maybe this will give you an insight as to why he didn't go to those Olympic team trials this past April. I think he's just a way better folk style wrestler. Think about what you just said. How do you score on him? How did Colin Moore score on him at the Olympic team trials at 21? Pushed him out of bounds a bunch and made him wrestle in the center. Now, the other thing is in college wrestling, you're allowed to stay on a knee. Can't do that in freestyle, right? How do you get to his legs? If you're like, it's all but impossible. It's all but impossible to get to a guy's legs when he's in decent position and he's down on a knee. It's impossible. They will shake their finger at you and then eventually they'll call you for a caution, make you stand up out of that 3-point stance. So if they don't do that in college, why wouldn't you do it? He's playing within the rule set. Makes sense. Now, do you think he's going to win this CKLV tournament?
Yes.
Yeah, I do too.
Yes.
I really do.
And I think it's going to be close. I think he's going to have some 3-1 matches. I think he's going to maybe have a 2-0 match. Not only can you get the sumbitch off his feet, you can't get away from him. Nobody really credits that. When he is on top, he will keep you down. Ask Miles and me, who gets away from everybody. Yeah. He's a bear, man. AJ Ferrari's a bear, and there's just not a lot of opportunity. You got to get him out of position to get into the attack to score. You got to start with that.
Yeah.
And look, he's got the conditioning. He's got the 7 minutes. That's always the intangible in collegiate. It's such a hard thing. It's harder than MMA. It is the hardest thing that you can do cardio-wise. He's got the lungs, man. He's got the lungs. He's got the strength. He's a big guy, but he's not too big where he's hurting himself cutting the weight class. He really is damn near a perfect athlete. I feel like that. And maybe I'm going a little heavy because nobody else compliments him, but he deserves a little bit of praise, man. This community's been a little rough on that dude.
No question. And look, if we're going to be honest about it, he has invited some of that stuff as well. Agreed?
Still is. He not backing down. He's got this new thing for Roadrunner. He hit the splits and did this thing. I had to ask other people, like, what does that mean? They're like, yeah, they're the Roadrunners. He won't back down. The referees warn him. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. Then he'll turn right away. He'll do it anyway. Yes, he invites it. He's a character.
I love it. I absolutely, and we need more of it
too.
We need more of it in the sport. And now that all said, though, okay, I think a guy like Trey Munoz, I don't think we've seen the best version of him yet. Now you do live in Oregon. Am I crazy for saying that, or do you think? I think we're real close to seeing the very best version of Trey Munoz that we've ever seen in our entire lives. This kid is for real. And obviously, decent enough pedigree. Mark was pretty good. He's pretty good at wrestling.
I love that. My senior year, by the way, 197 pounds, the very class that Trey is for a senior. Mark Munoz was the champion. And I only share that with you because wow, time flies. But the other side of it, I love that Trey went up a weight. That doesn't hurt him, and a lot of people think it does. That is going to help him, but it won't help until a little later in the season. It won't help until some of those big guys like Buchanan got to keep on making weight, or you get in a tournament that's a 3-day weigh-in or even a 2-day weigh-in. It starts to change, and to be a little bit lighter and a little bit smaller, man, it pays off in the end. I like it for Trey. He is definitely a player at 97 for the whole damn thing.
Yeah.
This Buchanan, by the way, I did not realize Buchanan was as good as Buchanan is. I watched those two wrestle. I went live, and I'm right here on the mat. I'm watching Trey and Buchanan. I did not know that Buchanan was that level of dog. I didn't know that he was a competitor. I thought he was a big, beautiful athlete.
Yeah.
And he's a legit tough guy. Legit.
So, I remember calling his matches when he was kind of, I think his sophomore year is kind of when he broke out in All-American. And I just remember him being so freaking stubborn on top. So, and you just don't see that very often at the upper weights. And I say that only because it's really hard to lift and return. And it's really hard to kind of do a goofy little ankle trip. And it's really hard to throw a boot in against a 197-pound gorilla. And you know what? Buchanan does that. And will he take the ever so sparsely push him out of bounds while you're still on top? And if you give away a stall call, well, then so be it. But I'm still ringing up that riding time. So he plays the game extremely well, but he's also just a dog, dude. The dude is just a mean, and he's a mean son of a bitch on top, too. He does not give a rip. He is going to take your head off on top. And don't give him a limb to mess with, because he will rip your arm off. I love the kid. Again, he might not get the respect that he deserves because he's been now at 3 different schools.
Yeah. And I must tell you, I did not know it about him. I even thought Iowa, this is a bad fit. I mean, you got to be a kind of guy. Iowa recruits a kind of guy. And Buchanan's that guy. I'm just sharing with you, I didn't know that he was. And now that I do, I don't know if there's a better fit for him than being around those Brands boys. Man, he's an intense guy himself. Yeah, I really gained a respect for Buchanan. He had come from behind on Trey. Trey doesn't wilt at the end of a match like some guys. Trey fights you till the bitter end. And Buchanan was able to run him down. And I didn't know that he had that inside of him. He's as a matter of fact, when I look at Buchanan and realize he couldn't finish a match against Penn State kid, Carter is what I want to say. I've got the wrong name, not Starochi, the Olympian.
Yeah, no. Why am I blanking as well?
Brooks.
We're the 2 biggest fans in America to say Aaron Brooks' name.
I was
I
like,
cannot
Adam,
believe that just happened.
I'm embarrassed a little bit.
Respect to Brooks
Yeah.
when he sees it.
No.
Buchanan can't finish a match against Brooks. He can't make it 7 minutes
Yeah.
within the criteria. When I watched how good Buchanan was, it actually made me stand back and look at Brooks different.
Yeah, he's an absolute
Or
phenom.
what
In fact,
Kekäisen is doing. Speaking of Brooks, you go look at what Kekäisen is doing, and you go look at Brooks. Go, my God, this Brooks is unbelievable.
yeah, he's so good. Let's talk about Kekäisen for a second, okay? We have a excuse me, a really good chance of seeing a rematch from the NCAA finals last year. Dustin Plott, Parker Kekäisen. Now they're ranked number 2 and 3 in the country because Starocci is now up at 84. However, do you think that David Taylor being in Stillwater has enough of an effect on a guy like Dustin Plott to get him over the hump against Kekäisen? Because let's be honest, right? He wasn't really that close at the NCAA tournament this past year. Do you think that just having David Taylor in the room for the 4, 5, 6 months that he's been there is enough to get Plott over the hump?
No, I don't, but that doesn't mean I don't think that he's not going to pull him up. Tom Brands came out when I was at the University of Oregon. The late great Ron Finley, rest his soul, retired, and the final search of coaches came down to 2. Chuck Kearney, who got the job, but he was versus Tom Brands, who was red hot. I mean, this is everybody's hero, and he's an Olympian. And Tom Brands came and he spoke to the team, and no other coach that came in and applied was allowed to address the team. This is how we knew, okay, our AD's really looking at this guy. And Tom Brands explained to us, contrary to what you guys might believe, I need you as a coach. I need you as an athlete to get to here. I'll pull you the rest of the way, but it's make believe that I can come in and I can change you. And this is himself as a coach, but he lets us know this is make believe. You've got to meet me 90% of the way. I will pull you. Oh, but that's still the most that I can do. And I never forget that because it was so true. It was really true that athletes make programs. Programs don't make athletes. But sometimes to hear one of the greats say it with his own mouth, David Taylor is going to matter. Dustin Plott definitely needed revamped. He was getting a little bit stale. He was getting a little bit worn out. Everyone does. And I do believe that there will be a revamping. You also have DNA. Your athleticism can take you ever so far, which in Dustin Plott case, he got some damn good DNA. He got a very good deal. But when his matches are getting closer with Kekäisen, I actually believe that's because of the familiarity, the dual meet, the conference championship, now the NCAA. You just feel a guy more. You can start to get a little closer, but I don't believe that the threat of beating Kekäisen has actually grown. As that score got closer, I don't think that the threat grew.
That's what I mean.
I don't know that it's enough to get him over that hump, but I see your point that Dustin Plott is a player. This Kekäisen, man, he's another guy like Ferrari. How are you going to score on him? That was the big thing with Carter Starocci meeting him. It's like, okay, Carter's a better athlete, but how is Carter going to score on him? And Carter ultimately wore him down.
Here's the thing, though, man. So first of all, not that I dislike Carter. I don't know the kid very well at all. In fact, I might have talked to him once or twice. You know who I do love? I love Parker Kekäisen. I love the kid. Okay, not only is he a stand-up dude, but he does so many things that people don't see. He goes to like college practices, and then he goes and does like youth club practices just for funsies to give back because he knows it's a big deal that Parker Kekäisen is in the room. My son's at this stupid, I don't know what tournament it was. Let's call it like preseason nationals, whatever. It was at UNI, okay? And I'm pretty close with Doug and with Lee, and they were kind enough to let me and my son use their room when they weren't using it. Parker Kekäisen comes in the room after lifting and literally, and I'm not exaggerating, grabs my son and wrestles with my son for about 45, beats the brakes off my son, I should say, which is fine.
Gotta love him.
Got it for like 45 minutes, Chael.
You have no choice. You must love that guy.
You're right. I have to, right? So think about what I'm saying. This guy, he's at the time he wasn't a national champion, but he was a couple-time All-American. He was a finalist. Comes in sopping wet from a drill, from a lift, and just grabs at the time 13-year-old and just wrestles with him for 45 minutes. Come on, dude. How do you not love this kid? He loves wrestling. Now, there's a couple other people in this bracket that could play bracket buster. A kid named Chris Folka, Jersey kid wrestling out of Cornell right now. Now, how often do you get to see those East Coast matches?
I keep up with all of them. If I don't see them, I read about them. But there's no matches that take place that I don't know about.
So I think him being up at 84, I think he poses enough of a squirrely kind of throw some stuff against the wall, see what sticks type of a threat, that if he gets a guy like Bennett Berge or Parker Keckheisen on his back, they're going to get pinned. And that's a fun thing to just have this, this big old, for lack of a better term, like hand grenade that you're throwing into the 184-pound bracket. And I think Chris Folka is definitely one of them.
Yeah, I think that's right as well. And the bottom line is we don't know. You and I get married to what guys have done in the past and the guys that we're familiar with. But if these guys are showing us anything, the Marcus Blazes of the world and the Bo Bassett's, if they're showing us anything, man, we're getting better at a younger age. And you can no longer look at a guy and go, he's a freshman. You used to be able to do that. Whoever a guy, he could have won Fargo 4 times. He's a freshman. It's just he's not going to have the physicality. It's not going to happen. You can't do that anymore. The world is starting to belong to these younger guys. So I'm not counting anyone out. I mean, it's one of the great things about the Cliff Keen. We learned it with the Cornell kid that got the jump on David Carr, just by example. But something always goes down at this tournament, man. Yeah. It never fails where somebody rises up, gets some attention, becomes the hunted, can't always hold on to that spot, but they at least get the opportunity. Cliff Keen is a very big deal, man. This is the one. The Midlands isn't what it used to be. I want it to, but it's just not because the Scuffle competes with it. The Cliff Keen, it's a hard tournament, bro.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Okay, 165. I'm going to read off some names. Some of them are mainstays in our world. Some of them are not. Julian Ramirez, ranked number 4 in the country, he's hot and cold. He has times where he looks lights out. Like he looks unbeatable. You want to talk about hard to score on? The dude does full splits anytime he wants to. Unbelievable. Terrell Barraclaw, okay, he's wrestling for Utah Valley because he couldn't make the Penn State team, and now he's ranked number 5 in the country. What does that tell you about the depth at Penn State? Hunter Garvin, okay, who is one of my favorite wrestlers to watch in the world. He's at Stanford. Sammy Sasso, and that's the one I want to get your insight on. Sammy Sasso, ranked number 7 at 165 pounds, took a year off, got shot, as you do, and he is now up at, come on, that was good. That was good. I made you giggle a little, as you do.
As you do.
As you do.
Boys will be boys.
Just a Tuesday. No, he's up 2 weight classes. Can he compete with these guys at 165 pounds? That's 2 weight classes and a year off.
Size matters. It's why we weigh him in. And we have traditionally seen the smaller guy has the advantage. We always think that it goes to the bigger guy. And every time we get reminded, it's actually the lighter guy. Now, 2 weight classes is another story. And when you're talking about size, it's not just what you weigh. A lot of it has to do with height. You can change weight classes and play that game successfully if you're tall enough. Sammy actually is a little short for that weight class. So it's going to be very interesting. Now, he's a competitor. I've been following this guy back when he was a cadet. I remember Roman Barvo Young got the jump on him, and it was like shocking news because we didn't know who Roman was. But just for example, Sasso has been a winner since he was a little boy. But 2 weight classes is very meaningful. And I can't give you a lot of examples, no matter how good a guy was, where he went 2 weight classes. I could give them to you all day with 1. Carter Starocha, I can give you all day with 1. 2 weight classes is another thing. I think that 7 is a little bit lofty. I think that 7 had a little bit of kindness to it. He's got the right to earn it. I'm on his side here, but had he not been shot, he's not ranked number 7, and that's the truth.
Copy that.
They did that out of kindness.
That's fair. I will say this too, the style of wrestling, he lets a lot of people in on his legs. And at 149 pounds, they might not have the horsepower to get it off the ground. 165 pounds, I'm telling you, that's just they're gonna rip his leg off. Like you see that little cradle position that he gets into, and he kind of sits the corner. Those guys are up off the ground. They're up off the ground already. It scares me, and it scares me not because I think he's actually going to get hurt. I just want to see the Sasso because when he's on, when he's clicking, he's a lot of fun to watch, and he's got a tremendous. We talked about the attitude that AJ Ferrari just exudes, right? Like he has this bigger than life character. Sammy Sasso has a muted version of that, but it's still as much of a badass attitude as anybody in the NCAA. And I just don't want to lose that. We need characters in this sport. And Sammy Sasso might have added to the lore of himself because he was shot last year. Okay. And I don't want to see that diminished because he goes up 2 weight classes. Is there a shot of that?
Well, I hear what you're saying, and I have that same concern. I mean, I find myself pulling for Sasso. As I say, I followed him since he's 15, and the guy is just a winner. But tell me this: what is the backstory on the 2 weight classes? Can he not make the team at 57?
I don't think he can get down to 49 anymore. And then at 157 pounds, Paddy Gallagher. Do I think he can beat Paddy Gallagher? Yeah, I do. But I think the team is probably better. And one of the things that Tom is probably the best I've ever heard of at this, he's one of the best I've ever heard of. He can talk you into anything. Like this guy, people have used the term used car salesman. When they talk about Tom Ryan, I don't choose because I think that has a generally negative connotation, but he can sell ice to an Eskimo. The guy's unbelievable. So I think there's a world in which he sits down with both Sammy Sasso and Paddy Gallagher and goes, look, Paddy, you're probably a true 57 and you can't beat Sammy. Sammy's a national finalist. Why doesn't he go up and you stay down at 57 and we're a better wrestling team from top to bottom when that happens? I'm speculating. I do not I text Tom very randomly, but I don't know that to be absolutely true. It's just my thought. Do you think they're a better team with him at 65? I do.
Yeah, that sounds right. It's always so interesting, but I love to know those backstories and what happens in the practice room. And we've got this code; it stays in the practice room. We've all heard it, but everybody follows it. I don't know if I've ever met a guy that breaks that deal, and I'm curious on those things. I would love to know what happened. I would love to know how we got here. How's he looking? Not to mention they've got some studs in the room at 65. I mean, just to make the lineup at Ohio State, he can for sure wrestle at this weight, but I don't know how much training he was able to do. It wasn't a discipline issue. When you get shot, I don't know what that rehab looked like. And I don't know why his body grew. I don't know if that's muscle. I don't know if that's exercise. I mean, I'm just sharing for you, there's a lot of questions there to answer. By the way, whatever happened in that whole deal? Did they arrest the guy that shot him? Did they ever catch that guy? I've never heard of it either. I've never heard that guy got grabbed.
No, I don't know, dude. I don't want. There's something about a 10-foot pole, Justin. You wrote me into some interesting things last time, and I'm not touching them this time. How about that?
You know where I was going with it anyway, I was going there. You read it correctly.
I did.
I was going to why we were in that situation to start. There was another guy that got jammed up. There was a guy in a smaller division, but he was a Fargo champion. He was a complete blue chipper and didn't quite have the grades, and he did a tear. But he was the one that pulled the trigger. He went on the run. They found him in a barn right nearby. Do you know this story? This was only last season.
No, I don't. No.
I can't produce his name. But yeah, he was a blue chip guy. That was some ugly drama that we went through with wrestling.
Yeah, look, man. We as a sport create fringe human beings, for better or for worse. We create. We've talked about this. Do we create addicts or do we just compel them? I don't know, but something tells me it's a little bit of the first, and probably more. Let's go to 149, sir. Shall we? Okay. Seriously though, 149 is a son of a gun. Caleb Henson's ranked number 1 in the country. Ty
Deserves to be. Deserves to be. What a hammer.
Absolute hammer. Ridge Lovett, number 5, Anthony Echemendia, Chance Lamer, Dylan D'Amelio, Jaden Abbas. Yeah, look, I'm gonna read. I could read off the rest of the names, but I want to stop at Jaden Abbas. Is he one of those guys that probably spent a lot of those bullets in the gun?
Yes,
Yeah.
he is, but it also comes down to that scale. I mean, he spent a lot of time trying to make that damn weight. You know, when Abbas is wrestling, he's just out there flowing, and there's not an injury, there's not something he's dealing with. Man, that he can definitely beat anybody in the country, and has. I
Mhm.
like him at this weight class. It might be a little heavy, but it still
Yeah.
does kind of alleviate that scale. Abbas is definitely a player. Henson, can't say enough good things. The winner
Right.
of that weight class is going to be Ridge Lovett. I'm a little surprised that
Yes.
there's a discussion in any direction other than that. He's
Yes.
probably not going to have that hard of a time winning it, frankly. As far as a wrestler, they know moves, they know positions, they're a little funky, they know when to be solid. It's Lovett. Check
Love
every
it.
one of those boxes. It's Ridge Lovett.
So so I went back and watched. So you got to remember too, Ty Waters lost to Ridge Lovett in the quarterfinals, and then Lovett loses to Henson in the semifinals of the NCAA tournament. It's my opinion, because Caleb Henson at the time was a freshman and really, I don't want to say nobody knew who he was, because obviously people knew who he was, but the book wasn't completely out on Caleb Henson. And so Caleb Henson wrestled an absolutely perfect match, wins 1-0 against Ridge Lovett. I don't think he's ever beaten him again. That's, again, it's my opinion, but I think that if you're Ridge Lovett, you find more ways in the first period to get into wrestling positions. And now you take that. I don't want to say Caleb Henson was stalling, because he wasn't. He wasn't stalling, but he was certainly not excited to go get legs on a guy like Ridge Lovett in the first period. He knew he was going to squeak it out at the end. And I love watching this kid. And we've had Ridge Lovett on the podcast. Kid loves wrestling. Like, he just wants to go mix it up. Like, all the kid wants to do is get chest to chest and see what kind of stuff he can kind of pull out of his ass. He's a lot of fun to watch, man.
No, I fully agree with that. And there's times in wrestling, very very common, that we will see it. Like, we as an audience will see somebody, and it might even be first round. We'll go, "Who's that? What is going on? That guy is wrestling way beyond his ability." I follow
Yeah.
this guy. He's never wrestled. Like, he scrambles every position. He stays out of the edge. All of a sudden, his gas tank's better than it's ever been. Caleb had one of those tournaments at the NCAAs. I'll give you a great example, as great as Kendall Cross was. But if you saw his very first match at the Olympic Games in '96, we all knew he was going to win the gold. Like sometimes you can just put a tournament together. I think that Caleb had one of those, as great as he is, but I really do think that he overperformed. And I think he had a little help along the way. I think, the bracket fell apart in certain
Yeah.
spots, and then his opponents choked on a little bit of pressure here and there.
Mm-hmm.
And it just created for this really special day. But
Yeah.
I see it the way you see it with Ridge Lovett. That he's going to win the tournament. I'm very confident in telling you that.
Yeah, that's fun. It's fun for me because I think, again, you want to talk about good for the sport, right? Number one, Ridge Lovett is good for the sport. Number two, Nebraska being as good as they are is very, very good for the sport. We don't have a meaningful team race. We just don't. Like, it doesn't.
What are they ranked, by the way? What's Nebraska ranked?
I think they're like top four.
They are. All right. I thought they were like number 8. They're top 4. Wow.
They could be. Joel, you might want to have to check on that, because I lost control of my computer right now. But yeah, the last I checked, they were like 4 or 5 or something. Like, they're freaking good, man. But it does bother me. It does bother me that we don't have, like, we know who's winning the national tournament this year. It's not really a question. It's just whether they're going to break their own record or not. Like, it's kind of sucks, you know. All right, heavyweight, dude.
How do you recruit like that, by the way? Why does Kale have such a successful recruit? I mean, isn't one of the things a guy looks at is, where can I get into the lineup? Kale convinces these guys that know full well they're coming out. They're top guy. They're a Fargo champion, but the NCAA champion is 2 years ahead of them. He's going to have to be in the room 3 years with this guy. Very unlikely to break in. And Kale gets him anyway. They see that as a bonus. They like that idea that it's going to be iron on iron, and whoever. How do you sell that to a guy? I'm a very competitive guy, but I couldn't do it. I'm not competitive enough to do that. Kale has no problem with it. He uses it to his advantage. You want to talk about a guy that can sell ice to an Eskimo? Don't overlook Sanderson, man. He might be shy and polite. That
Yeah.
dude is a killer. That dude
No
would
doubt.
be running a Fortune 500 company if he was not a wrestling coach in State College. He
No,
would
no
be
question.
CEO of a massive company.
Yeah, there's no question. And you look at the kid Marcus Blaze. You know, he puts together an incredible run at the trials. He wins just about anything you can win in high school. And there's no chance not there's no chance. There's no guarantee he's going to start at Penn State. And I'm going to leave that statement open ended. There's no guarantee he's going to start, period, at Penn State. Like, not like next year. I'm talking about ever, right?
Yeah.
Because, first of all, he's a better freestyle wrestler than he is a folk style wrestler. I think that is pretty widely regarded as true. But also, you're looking at a guy, Luke Lillidahl at 25, 33, they have a transfer, 41, pretty good. You got a two-time finalist in Bo Bar. So there's just, and they have guy after guy on that depth chart. I don't know where he fits in. I just don't know.
Mike, where is Nagao? Where is Aaron Nagao? I know he's at State College, but did he get beat out for 33?
I think so.
Okay.
So.
Because he didn't have a redshirt year. He's not on a redshirt year. He got beat out. All right.
Yeah.
I was at NCAA's last year, and I went to the bathroom. And when I'm in the bathroom, there's a guy in there, and he's all decked out in Penn State gear. We make brief conversation, but he shares with me that no, he doesn't have a kid, or he's not an alumni. He's a booster. He got on a big bus. They brought a whole bunch of people. But, he's got all the gear like a guy that would know. I know nothing more about this man than he looked like he would know. He told me right there in the bathroom on Aaron Nagao, he said, he will not wrestle for us again. I said, really? And he said, no. And I said, but I don't understand. Like, I need more. That's a big thing. He said, no, he said he not only won't be the guy, he's not the number 2 guy. Starting next year, we got some freshmen, but he'll actually be number 3 in our lineup. And I just thought it was a really big statement. Nagao was on his way. He was setting the world on fire. They paid a pretty nice penny from him to get him from Minnesota. And I'm trying to share to the depth of Penn State. According to one of their own boosters, they got quite a lineup there at 33.
Yeah, and Braden Davis, the kid's he's a stud. He's a winner. Like, he's one of those guys. And again, you want to talk about coaches that can infect their athletes with greatness. They can just infect their athletes with greatness. Cael Sanderson's one of them. He has these guys believing that they're bulletproof. And guess what? That is a big freaking deal. When it comes down to it. Because, you saw it with Gable in the 80s and the 90s, right? You had to go wrestle the singlet before you even wrestled the person in it, right? And you're seeing that now with look, Braden Davis was good in high school. He was good. He wasn't all world. He was good. But now I think he's ranked like number 2 in the country, up a weight. Yep. Like, the dude's a killer. Unreal.
Can I tell you one thing about Penn State? Because I don't feel that Cael and company get credit for this, but they should. They give back to wrestling. They participate. It doesn't matter if you're USAW or UWW. If you're going to roll the mats out and bring some whistles, they will bring a crew. There is never an age group trials. There is never an open tournament, no matter how small on the side. They will be there, and they'll send their top coaches. Cael can't even move around a wrestling tournament. They want his autograph, and they want his picture. It's not a great environment for him. He will come. If you're willing to roll the mats out, he will bring a crew. And by the way, the crew that he'll bring to a little side tournament have age group world championships. And I've always appreciated that about those guys. And I feel like they don't really get recognized for that, but they are not selective.
I'm going to argue. I would say you're right about world titles. But I think that we all know that the number one thing that our sport is missing right now is a dual meet national championship.
Oh.
And they're not going to participate in that. And they haven't. They have when they've had the right team, but are not committed to making this a yearly sanctioned thing, because that's not what they recruit for. Now, maybe you can make the argument now that when they have a top to bottom team, that they'd be more apt to do it, but you don't get the choice. Like, if we're going to agree that we have a national championship and it's decided, the team race is decided team versus team, not individual versus individual, well, then you have to do it every year. You have to do it every year. It can't be a one-time thing.
My understanding on their lack of support of that was the sanctioning. My understanding was the community wanted to form this thing, but it wasn't going to be recognized by the NCAA. It wasn't actually going to be in the books. And that is where Penn State said, wait a second. You get this regulated, you recognize this with a trophy and we'll be there, but we're not putting it on the line for a community award. That was my understanding, at least.
So they're not there for the community.
Don't be a dick, Maul. Don't use my words against me. All right. Nobody likes a know-it-all. Hey, by the way, can we go back? You had brought up Gable Steveson earlier, and you said that your son had looked at it. If I can back your son on that, Gable did everything he could do to not win. He did everything he could do to rig the deck against him. When he went out there with Paris, Mason Paris, and he ends up beating Paris worse than he had beat him before he took that year off. That was stunning. And that won't last forever. But when Gable won the title at 20 years old, and I got to go to Olympic camp in Alpharetta, I got to really be around him and watch him. And one thing that I did realize is he could win this on accident. Like he's not the one that was putting in all this extra time and this oh man, this is all he thinks about. And look, it wasn't like that. And when you're a boy and at 20-year-old, you're a boy, you still get that second round of puberty, that second round of man strength that kicks in around 24 or 25, where just by being alive as an athlete, you get better before it starts going the other way with time. He hadn't hit that yet. Yeah. He beat a cool from Turkey 8-0, and NBC didn't realize what a big match it was. They didn't even air it, those pricks. It was the semifinals. He beat a cool 8-0 just to get to the finals. And people's memories do play tricks on them. He did not have an overly close match with Gio. He gave up 6 points in 4 seconds. He got taken down and gutted twice. That was tight and all of that with a 0.2 of a second. That was not a very close competition. I mean, Gable was that far ahead, and that was still as a boy. He couldn't even go into a bar yet. And I just share, that's the part that your son and that I missed. That even with doing the pro wrestling or secretly having his eye on football or dabbling a little bit in MMA, he still got that second round of strength. Now he weighed in at 275 against South Dakota. 275. He had never weighed in that heavy, all muscled up. Oh my goodness. Yeah. What a problem. What a problem.
It's not just that to me. And here's the biggest reason that I said that to my son when I said it to him. The biggest reason is very simple. He had the greatest timing that I have ever seen on a wrestling mat. I'll give you a perfect example of this. Trent Hilger is all of 285. He is 6'4". He is an absolute freak of nature when it comes to being an athlete. And Gable Steveson quite simply reached down, level changed, and picked up his foot with one hand. And I go, well, there's never going to be another person that can ever do that ever again. And that is timing. That is not perfect technique. That is him being, the hay is in the barn. He has seen that position so many times at such a high level. You don't lose that. You just don't lose it. They talk about Tom Brady playing well into his 40s. Well, it was freaking easy for him. It was easy for him because the sport slowed down. When everything was taking 1 second for you to see it, it took him 6 seconds. It's quite simply, he's going to be there. I've seen this play unfold thousands upon thousands, and you've seen it with Gable Steveson time in and time again, and he can't be stopped. When his timing, he just has to, right now, if I'm Minnesota, take the year off, come in and goof around with coaches whenever you want, because here's the deal. We can roll you out there for the conference tournament. We can roll you out there for the NCAA tournament. And we know we got 25 points. Period. The end. He's the best wrestler I've ever seen. Period. He's unbelievable.
I had a coach, Chuck Kearney. He's coaching out at Mary's. I'm drawing a blank. St. Mary's. Yeah. But he had a thought for me, and he said to end the GOAT conversation, if Gable, and he told me this after Gable had won the gold, if Gable for 2024 would switch to Greco, it would give him 3 years. Chuck Kearney argued Gable would win the gold, and if he was a gold medalist in freestyle and Greco, We would not even be allowed to have a debate. And by the way, he probably would have won it in Greco had he gone for 3 years. Austin DeSanto just switched over to Greco. I'm very curious where that's going to go. I tend to lean towards Austin in 2028 just because of that pace and that mindset. And my only point was just to back you up on Gable as a once in a time athlete. Like when you look at Kirk Levick and how great he is, undefeated, and Hodge and this and that.
Yeah.
We don't have much of a conversation there. That's not going to be a highly sought after, sold out match. It's not going to be one of those things. It really is a foregone conclusion. I would love to be wrong. It would be great for wrestling if he could just have a real close one, but it's very hard to imagine.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you. All right, last weight class here that I really want to talk about, and it happens to be heavyweight.
Why do you hate Penn State? Like, what did they do? Somewhere along the way, they got on the wrong side of Mike Mal. I'm just curious, like, what is it that they did? And I'm not going to believe that it's their reluctance to do a dual meet, non-existent format that isn't even sanctioned. I think there's something more to it. What happened between you and Penn State?
Well, Kale and I have had our run-ins before, for sure.
Really?
I don't think it's yeah. And like, all right, yeah, let's talk about it. Why not? I remember I trained an athlete. His name is Anthony Cassar. Anthony Cassar goes to Penn State.
Tony Two Fingers. I know him.
Tony, yeah, he's a good guy. But Tony,
he told Gable Steveson one time. He did something to Gable Steveson, but it was Tony Two Fingers is where that came from. Okay, please, I want to hear the story.
I love it. So Ant he got kind of screwed by Shakur, and you know what? Coach put him out there at 97. That makes sense. Anthony goes up to 285, wins a national title, beats Gable Steveson twice to do it.
Twice.
Pretty impressive stuff. And then he chooses in his brain already to make the switch to freestyle, and he really wants to win an Olympic gold medal. And about 2 months later, he calls me up and he says, Coach, they really want me to come back. They got me a medical red shirt. And I'm sitting there going, that's a terrible idea. Okay, it's a terrible idea. And he goes, well, why do you think it's a terrible idea? I said, well, here's my thought process on it. Number one, you don't know how to wrestle freestyle at all. Like I coached you in high school. You never wrestled freestyle in high school. You had one freestyle match while you were still in high school. One. He wrestled at Beat the Streets in Times Square, and he goes, how do I wrestle freestyle? I go, keep taking him down. He goes, okay. And he did that, and he won. And he made a junior team after his freshman year, just on sheer athletic ability alone. He had there was no leg lace, there was no gut wrench, there was no front headlock stuff. There was nothing that he knew. It was just, I'm going to go wrestle. If I keep taking him down and he doesn't take me down too many times, seems like things are going to work out. And it did. Sure. He gets hurt really bad at the Junior World Championships, misses a year, blah, blah, blah. So the point that I'm trying to make is that I deterred him from taking that 5th year of eligibility. And Kale let me know. He came up to me in Fargo and gave me the business pretty good. And I said, listen, I'm going to make the same case that I did with Anthony. You want to win a gold medal, you don't know how to wrestle freestyle. You should learn how to wrestle freestyle. He's like, well, what? Kyle Snyder did it while he was still in college. I said, Kyle Snyder grew up wrestling freestyle. Maryland, there weren't many ways to wrestle in the offseason other than wrestle freestyle. That wasn't the case in New Jersey when Anthony Cassar was coming up. And so I think while we've had our personal differences, I respect the hell out of the guy. I really do. But I also think that there, like you said, there is this underlying competitive nature in him that he doesn't let everyone see. And they just kind of schlep it off as, oh, he's this sweet, quiet guy. No, he is an absolute killer. He is an absolute, like you look at the Brands brothers and they're jumping up and down and they're ferociously intense in the corner. Kale's just doing that in his head. Right? Like he's just doing that in his head. Sure. So I think that there is a bit of masquerade in that room that I don't love. I don't love that they don't put themselves in the public eye very often. I don't love that while you probably don't need to be in their wrestling room every day with a camera. I don't love that they don't let their guys do interviews very often. These are the absolute top of our sport, right? We can argue about gold medals in the Olympics, but the most eyeballs are on NCAA wrestling, and that's not even a close second, right? There's not even a close second, and we have these heroes already. We have the legacy team, and they don't let cameras in their room, and it drives me bananas. So, to me, that's the biggest difference. Did I lose you? I lost him. Daggone it. Did our
It's
time run
because
out?
it's because he won't come on our podcast.
Kale. Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I do text him once a year. I text him. How much of that rant did you get?
I got all of it, but the last 2 seconds. And by the way, I'm just going to pick up. I fully agree with you. I would like to see more. Like, they can sell out arenas. They've made wrestling profitable. It is such a rare thing. And they do have these stars to our community.
Yeah.
I've always thought one of the reasons they keep it out. I mean, listen, you can't get anybody to keep a secret. The White House cannot get a secret out of the Oval Office. The CIA can't keep a secret. Two people can keep secrets: the Mafia and Penn State. You cannot get info from them, and they stick to the script. It's amazing. I've known some of these guys 10 and 12 years. I don't even text them and ask them about wrestling more because they are not going to tell me. They will never go, all right, Chael, here's the thing. Keep it to us, and here's the deal. They all, and I don't know how they've done that so successfully. I don't know what that talk is like or how they contain all of those things. But I have always, and maybe I'm looking at it wrong, but I have always thought it was like part of their humility. You know, we're not in here to be big stars, and maybe they don't know that the rest of us are so curious what they're doing. I'll tell you this. David Taylor, who idolizes Kale and has always paid credit to him, which I really do think is a very cool thing. Most guys at some point think I got to kill the master. I really like that David said, no, I admire this guy. But David has taken that to Oklahoma State. I mean, they were red hot for 2 weeks, and you were getting in there, and they were having they got this new merchandise, man. It was looking so cool, and they cut the cameras out, and it's very hard to get a word out of there, which I think is just something that, you know, he learned from his coach. But I do wish that we knew more. I love when the cameras get in there. I love when you get a little glimpse of it. Kale let something out a couple of weeks ago, and he was playing around with Messenbrink, but he was like talking to somebody making jokes while he was pinning Messenbrink.
It's awesome.
It was awesome. It's like, would you
awesome.
please, I'm begging, would you please give us more of this? Yeah. So I can see where somebody in media, like I can see where that would.
Yeah, that type of stuff bothers me, but it's also like the holier than thou stuff, and that's the way I look at it, like that we're so virtuous and everyone else isn't, and then you lie to us about Nick Soriano. like you know, I mean, you knew that he wasn't going to wrestle, and when someone asked you, is Nick Soriano going to wrestle at the Big Ten championships or at the NCAA tournament, and you said he's working out downstairs in the basement right now, it's a lie. I mean, you know, so, and I get it, right? Like, they do want full control over the information that comes into and out of their room. I get that. I really do.
You know how they kept Carter Starochi not wrestling in the Big Ten? You know how they kept that a secret?
No.
They didn't tell Carter. They didn't tell anybody, and that included Carter. So Carter had a whole bus of, like, you know, boosters, his mom and dad and his neighbors. They got this bus together, and they drove across the country, and they got there, and they got the shirts and the signs, and they pulled him. Carter was so upset. He went back to State College and put a message out on social media that sounded like, I am done. He legitimately was not told. And I don't have an overpoint to that other than I think that's pretty interesting. But when it comes to information, yeah, man, they play it close. They play it very, very close.
Yeah, they do. Well, this, as always, it has been an absolute pleasure to
What is your
you.
what is it that you have to do? You blew through this so fast. We didn't even touch, barely touched on 57. You did this thing on Sasso. I wanted to get into the drama that he allegedly was on the street and it was like a drug deal gone bad. You got out of, and I'm not even saying it was. I'm saying the drama behind it. Then they got some guy that shot it. They don't cuff him up, and the team didn't go find him and beat the living you know what out of him. So the dude's like a player in Columbus on some level. That's interesting stuff. You got away from all of it.
I skated it. I gave you this Kale story, though.
What?
I gave you the Kale story.
You did. That was actually very brave of you. And I appreciated the Kassar story. I did not know that about Kassar. And by the way, he goes to the Open. He ends up getting hurt. He stops wrestling. He goes into MMA. He's undefeated now. I've only got to see him fight once. I think he's just 2-0 because they can't find anybody to take him on.
Fight him. Yeah, nobody wants to
Tony
fight him.
Two Fingers isn't done, man. Tony Two Fingers, when he sets his mind to something, he is very likely to get it.
He's a for me, you know, there were kids that I trained that probably had more athletic ability than him. There were kids that I've trained that had better instincts on a wrestling mat. There were kids that had better technique. But completely, if you took all those levels and added them up, he'd have a higher cumulative score. I mean, he had great athleticism, although not the best. He had an incredible work ethic. And the kid, you know, I can remember after he didn't even place in the state tournament his junior year. He didn't place in the state tournament his junior year. And I said, listen, stop cutting weight. 171 is gone. It's gone. So he goes up to 189. I think that the weight class was the next year, and he goes undefeated, wins a state title. But I'll never forget that even that season, this kid used to come from an hour away. He would come to my lift before. He would lift at 6. He would wrestle at 7, and then he would do a private lesson with me. Okay, I was a little bit lighter at the time, but not much. And he was still beating the brakes off me. He busted my collarbone. Dude, like I took a 2-on-1 off and he headbutted me right in the collarbone to defend. And he snapped my collarbone. So this is a kid that is willing to put in the work no matter what he does. And yeah, he was an absolute pleasure to train. What a great kid. Great kid.
No, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Hey, and thank you for the time. I enjoyed the show. I enjoyed being here. Whatever you're supposed to say to sound when you get off, like all those nice things. I've actually had it with you. Goodbye.
See ya.